Hello and welcome to the Speaking Spirit podcast. My name is Daisy Farrell and I'm your host. I am a psychic medium, healer, teacher, and artist based in the Hudson Valley, New York. And yay, I'm so glad that you're here with me today. So this is really, really exciting because this is my first episode where I have a guest on, and she's a very dear friend of mine. I absolutely love her. And I'm going to bring her on in just a minute, but I was just going to explain a little bit of what this series is going to be. So I wanted to start this mini series, really touching on the topic of loss and grief through the lens of spirituality. So how people have experienced loss and how it has been a catalyst for spiritual awakening for them, how it's changed their perspective in their spiritual practices or how they view spirituality. And also how it brings unlikely people together. So many things. There's so many things that loss does in our life. It's obviously also kind of an unavoidable part of life, right? I mean, we have loss in many different forms. This series in particular, at least the start of it, is going to be around loss of people, loss of loved ones. So Jaclyn Kaminski is a quantum Akashic embodiment guide, and she is awesome, and I absolutely love her. Say hi, Jaci.
Hello, I am so excited to be here with you, and I am excited for everyone to listen to this because this is this is the catalyst of everything for me.
Yeah.
So I love that you're doing this.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I was excited to bring you on, and I was going to say too, I happen to just have a lot of close friends of mine that have experienced this type of situation, where loss was either the precipice of, when they opened up to their abilities, their spirituality, all kinds of things. So I have a lot of great guests to be able to bring on this topic. And I also think it's something that's so important to share with other people, because I wanted to have this safe environment, this safe space for people to hopefully listen to and feel seen, right? And feel heard, and know that they're not alone in their journey. And just maybe to also enlighten some perspective in whatever loss they may be going through as well. So I'm so excited to dive in. And basically, we're just going to get right to it. I'm just going to dive right in here. So I know that we're going to be discussing, in particular, the loss of your father.
Yes.
But there may be, obviously, if there's other pieces to that, of course, feel free to share. But let's start with that. So basically, if you can explain to me what the loss was in particular.
Absolutely. So, my dad had passed away. So it came to us as a shock. So which is kind of crazy when I explain to you why. He had idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. He had a double lung transplant. But so I could see up front, that would have been scary. But 3 years later, after his lung transplant, and he was doing amazing, he ended up choking on a piece of fungus because he stopped a medication. Mm-hmm. And he had went into cardiac arrest, and they had worked on him. We had to have him evacuated down to Philly to the transplant hospital. And I was on point and with it. I was with the doctors. Everything was going. I was okay, we just need to get him here. Everything will be fine. Right. And then they came to us and said that he was brain dead. Wow. And so that was when they came to us, that's literally, I had a job, I had a mission, right? I was talking to the doctors, keeping everything together, helping my mother. And then they said that, and I literally broke. And I had lots of death. My best friend died. Literally my entire best friend in the world died. Right. And I was beside myself when she passed, but my father's death hit me there are no words. I literally was a little girl who was in a corner and scared, alone, crying, and I was a grown-ass woman, right? And I was what is this? And I remember even when I would go to sleep, I would wake up, that's how I was so not okay. I would wake up lost, in my own home and being oh, where the fuck am I? Completely lost every single night. Yeah. Yeah. It was absolutely awful. I was never, there are no words to describe it. And I always love there are no words.
Yeah.
And it was such a hard time. Um, and it was so interesting because I was in the depths of my grief and hell, and right, I had kids, and I was like angry at the world, and
Right.
really angry, right? So I was a terrible mother at the time. I did the best I could, but I had nothing to give anyone, and I
Right.
didn't care. And then I actually went to a medium.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But it was very interesting because so she was a medium and a Reiki healer, right? And I had readings before, never from her, but I was like, that's fine. I was like, oh, I would love to do Reiki. So I was supposed to do Reiki first and then have a reading.
Mm-hmm.
We never got to the reading. We only did the Reiki. However, in this session with Reiki, it literally changed my life because I physically, and I truly mean physically, felt him with me. I literally felt him wrap me in a hug. I literally felt him when he had passed. I was holding a certain hand of his, and that's like his sign now when he comes to me. But at the time, I did not know this. He literally grabbed the same hand, and I could literally feel him. And so as she's doing my Reiki, she literally comes through, and she's like, your father's here. And I was like, yeah, I already know that. I can feel him here. He basically took over the Reiki session, which it's so funny because she will always tell you oh my God, I've never had that happen before. And he is here and strong.
Right.
And from that moment on, and I remember laying there and I remember hearing him say we're doing this. Right. And it was that moment where she was like, you're supposed to be doing this work, and your father's really making sure I say that to you. And at the same time, it was almost as if I could hear him saying to me, which now I realize he was, I was hearing, we're doing this. And I remember leaving that, and I remember coming upstairs because we did it in my basement, and everybody looked at me and they're like, oh my God, you're floating. And I was and I could literally, I could just hear him from that. It was then that I was able to truly hear him talking to me. Ever since that one experience, it literally blew me wide open. And I was like, oh my God. And it literally changed my life. And which is so crazy to say because I miss my father so much. What I wouldn't do to physically hug him.
Oh, I know.
And it brings tears to my eyes, but at the same time, how lucky am I that I have him on the other side? Because I have an amazing relationship with him now that I would never have with him alive. And that's just the truth. As crazy as that sounds.
No, I get it. I hear you. Yeah. Yeah, no. Okay. So thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, there's so many good points that you brought up there that I wanted to just highlight. One in particular, well, first off, well, there's a few things, but I know the one thing that you're talking about how, of course we don't ever want, cause also my dad passed. And so I obviously really relate to this. And, of course I never, ever would have ever wanted my dad to pass. No way. And I would give anything to have him back here. But I also understand that perspective. And I understand, I also I love having him there for me on that side. And I had there was a lot of similarities in your experience that you brought up. Just especially when you're talking about just being at night too, just being completely lost and in the darkest possible place. I went through very similar thing where I just was what is I did exactly what you're saying. I didn't have words for it. I just I remember I literally felt I was being consumed by this dark just mass. That's kind of what it felt like. And I felt this tightness in my chest. I felt I couldn't breathe.
Yeah.
I felt this pain in my chest too. I just and I felt the most intense feeling of panic even though there wasn't necessarily anything to like panic over, but it was like this feeling of like urgency and like panic,
Yes.
unlike anything I have ever felt in my life. And I felt it all the time, but it was worse. It was the worst at night, during the night.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just, I really definitely related to that. And the other thing of, yeah, being able to have this amazing relationship. And I think that's something that we'll kind of touch on maybe in a little bit.
Yeah.
But one of the things I wanted to ask you first was, what did your life look like when it comes to like spirituality and any of this before this happened?
So none, right?
Right.
I don't want to say none. I was very much always called to it,
Mhm. Mhm.
but didn't really like do anything about it. And was like interested,
Mhm.
but it kind of like stopped there. Like I didn't
Right.
really like there was I literally stopped there.
Gotcha. Yeah. So you were like open to it and you were curious about it. But
Right. But
yeah.
I would do nothing
Right.
about it, didn't look into
Right.
anything
Mhm.
like at all.
Mhm. Yeah, and would you say that like that you had an awareness, because I know we've kind of talked about this, like that you had an awareness of your abilities early on, or when do you think you started to maybe have an awareness of your abilities, or was it one of those situations where, because it was kind of like for me, where I wasn't able to realize that certain experiences were my abilities until realized like what I was. So, yeah.
So twofold, yes. So
Yeah. Yeah.
when I look back now, I
Mhm.
definitely was always very intuitive and did not realize how intuitive I
Right.
was.
Right.
So there's definitely that. I had no idea.
Mhm.
Um and I didn't realize that that's what it was.
Right.
But when I like now what I know, I actually it's a huge trauma for me. So it's
Mhm.
like something that I'm actually working on healing. But when I was like 2,
Mhm.
I had people in my room, like people that I could see, my 2-year-old's little self
Mhm.
saw spirit.
Mhm.
Spirit was communicating with me. I was like, what's going on?
Mhm.
Definitely had fear there.
Yeah.
Said something to my parents. My parents told me that basically it was because my father watches Michael Jackson videos and we were associating it with like the Thriller video, which by the way,
Right.
now I have such huge, like I can't say Michael Jackson. I'm like, no, no, don't listen to him. Even though, right, like it really, what it came down to was that. And then they told me, no, 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 that's not what you're seeing. That's not really happening to you.
Right.
Um, and it's so funny because that like that one incident has really like all these years later, like now I realize I have a lot of shit based in
Mhm.
because of that one moment in time.
Right. Right.
But so that I almost want to say it was like that feels like it kind of I wasn't believed.
Right.
And I felt like I probably from that moment on shut it down and my intuition was still really strong.
Right.
But I kind of like was like, no, no, that's like not a safe place to go and just kind of detached from it until, which is funny, my father was like totally a non-believer of all of
Mhm.
this.
Right.
Which is so funny to me.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's always, yeah, I know. Especially as just as a medium, like when I bring through people, and then you get someone on the other side and they're like, well, yeah, you were right. They're like, this is pretty cool. Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, cool. So then and then as far as like Reiki goes, you had never had like a healing, you had never had like
That was
any,
the
yeah.
first. So I did mediumship readings all the time, all the
Got
time,
it.
all the time,
Okay.
all the time. So I always had mediums. I
Mhm.
went to those. They were great. Always
Yeah.
loved those.
Mhm.
Always felt very called to that piece of it.
Got it. Yeah.
And then but Reiki I had never ever ever had before. So that was
Okay.
the first time ever. I don't even know at this point if I had heard of it.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I actually think that's really cool, especially because of what you do now. Because to me, I feel like it's like you have these little inklings of your connection and everything. And then, of course, after this loss with your dad, I mean, all of a sudden, then you have this experience within, this physical experience, right? And you're
Yeah.
all about these, your body, right?
I am.
And to me, it was like waking you up in that calling, because that's really like your superpower, you know. I
Yeah.
mean,
Oh,
that's
for sure.
yeah,
It,
yeah,
and I don't, had he not passed,
right,
like, it truly, as fucked up as this sounds,
yeah,
I would not be doing the work I am today without, like, this was part
right,
of the plan, right?
right,
It's like,
right.
it's,
No, yeah,
we're
yeah,
all like, we made that soul pack before we got here. Like, that was part of it.
right,
So,
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I hear you. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, there's certain, you know, and that's where I've been really grateful. I gotta say, it's actually, I mean, within my spiritual practice, but and obviously my experiences and what I do, but also actually in AA, that really was something that I'm really grateful for, because it really gave me the ability to be able to see like the most horrible things
yeah.
in this different light, you know, and in I was it's given me this ability to be able to always kind of see the positive in like the worst things. And you know, I'm not saying that's always easy, but because there was a moment too where I really, especially with the loss of my dad, where I really lost my faith for a while. For a while, I was really like, I don't trust the plan. I don't trust any of this. Like, I don't
Yeah.
get it, you know. But I was able to slowly kind of return back to it, right? Because
Yeah.
and I used tools that I had learned, like in order to do that. And also, I think that's the other thing. It's like with the timing of things, the timing of how this stuff unfolds, that's also something that I really honestly learned in AA too, was the trusting of the timeline of things. Because here's the thing, if this had happened to me before I got sober, or like before I ever, you know, I would have had a completely different, you know, perspective, completely different experience of it,
Oh, yeah.
you know, and that's where, you know, I was so grateful. I was so grateful that I was able to go through, in particular, like my dad's passing with this awareness.
Yeah.
Because it's something that, yeah, so that's I guess that's where it was a little different for me. I mean, I had already stepped into this work,
Yeah.
but I feel like in my case, like that was like for a reason too. You know, it was like I needed to, because I it helped me help my dad. You know,
Oh,
number
for
one,
sure.
you know, and that was like the biggest gift ever. So tell me, so once that happened, kind of what unfolded?
How did I get here?
Yeah, right.
So,
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
funny. So she actually, when she was leaving,
Mhm,
this woman, she said to me, I have this mediumship class coming. You should totally try.
mhm,
And I was like, all right. They say everyone can do it, right?
mhm.
Let's really see if I can.
Right.
And so that was when I actually had started. So like my dad is probably dead at this point, maybe 45 days.
Wow. Yeah, so that's quick.
So it was fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so for the next year to two was when I did mediumship and like really connected with my dad. And what was so
Yeah.
funny was like, and it was crazy because everybody used to say like, oh, well, you know, if you just died, you don't normally come through so quickly. And I was like, yeah, that's not true.
No. That's definitely not
That's
true.
not true. Here he is.
Yeah.
He was screwing with me prior to, because he was like, right, he was brain dead, so he was no
Yeah.
longer with his body for probably 4-ish days, 5-ish days, where he was literally screwing with me at the hospital and Michael Jackson. So like there, he was
Right.
very much present in there.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like how I really was working with him, and he was working with all of the other like new mediums in my group, and
Mhm.
which I loved, and it was lots
Yeah.
of fun. And then I was doing that for a while, and that I just kept feeling like something was missing and something was missing and
Yeah.
something was missing. I didn't feel healing to me. It was like, this is great
Right.
that I can talk, but like I have healing that's
Yes.
needed, and I can't get that through
Right.
this.
Right.
So that led me to Reiki and becoming a Reiki master.
Yeah.
And that still didn't feel right.
Mhm. Yep.
So that led me to like, I felt like there was such a big piece missing, which is where like truly getting into my body.
Yeah.
came next, and like listening to my body, and that's where breath work came in, and somatic work, and really realizing like, which took me forever to realize, and it just, right, I'm always following the breadcrumbs and like
Right.
listening to my intuition, and everything
Yeah.
that keeps unfolding, which is where like the quantum came from, like realizing that's my
Right.
natural resting place. I had no idea that was my natural resting place. Now I do, but
Yeah.
I didn't.
Mhm.
And then how like amazing the Akashic records have been, and like how I get to like just kind of bring it all together,
Mhm.
really has been friggin' life changing. The person I am today and the person I was when he died, even before he died,
Right.
we are not even remotely the same. Like, not
Yeah.
even a little bit. It
Yeah.
is night and day.
Yeah. And how long has it been?
5 years.
Wow. That's a lot of change in 5 years.
A ton.
Yeah.
I laugh
Massive.
because every year my life is massively different than the prior
Yeah.
year. And I'm always
Yeah.
like, oh my God, it is literally, it's like that quantum. It's like quantum jump, quantum jump,
Right.
quantum jump.
Right. Well, and it's a beautiful example to me too of, because you were just saying like following the breadcrumbs. Like I mean, and that's what I love about you. I mean, you trust, you really trust, you trust this work, you trust your connection, and you just flow with it. You just flow with it. But there's so much power in that. There's so much. It's like, it's whenever we resist, that's where, and like, we have to have our moments where we resist, of course, we're human, but it's just the more that we can just go with it. I mean, and that's what I've learned. Like, there's boundless, I mean, just potential within that, right? Within that
Oh,
space. And
so much.
yeah. And I think it's also like, when you gain a person that is so deeply connected to you on spirit side, it's like you get this extra push, right?
Do.
Yeah, cuz like I really felt that. I mean, I got to be honest. I mean, that's really, of course, yes, like I know I do all this for me first, but well, in spirit too, right? It's the relationship, but like,
Yeah.
a big part of what's kind of catapulted me like forward since my dad has passed is my dad. I just, because I know he's like, come on, keep going, like get moving. I'm like, okay, like,
It is
yeah,
so true though.
yeah,
And because like I had a lot of death. It's not that I did.
yeah,
I have a lot, and none of like, even like from a connection now, I can absolutely still connect to all of them.
yeah.
But there is 1000% a difference with my father. He
Mm-hmm.
is like right here at all times, and like, okay.
Right.
And he is like, let's go. He always says like, I'm not, he likes to say, I'm like, we're holding hands, like doing it together, but it
Mm-hmm.
is very much like he is literally doing it with me.
Yeah. Yeah. See, and I love that, and I do remember that it was like, because I think for me too, for several years before this happened, like I felt very stuck in a lot of ways. I felt very like stuck in what I was doing in my life, mainly due to chronic illness. And yeah, I just remember like after he passed, like I felt this readjusting. I mean, obviously, but like this readjusting in energy of my spirit team, right?
Yeah.
I just felt even more, and that's the other thing that I was going to bring up, that, and I'm sure you probably understand this. That's one of the craziest things I also didn't necessarily expect to come from this too. But I feel like I learned like the vibration of love to a
Mm.
degree that I've never experienced in my entire life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
1000%.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's like pure unconditional, like
Right.
pure unconditional, like there's nothing wrong with you. You are whole, you are complete, you are
Right.
perfect,
Right.
just as you are, even with all your shit.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's amazing. Like I can't even explain. Like I remember it started when my dad was in hospice. And I just remember the energy in that room was just flipping me out. It was just unreal, the amount of love that I felt in that room. And like and then also at even his service, like I just could just feel that. It was so
Mhm.
overwhelming. And it was amazing too, because my dad, just like what you were saying with yours, my dad came through pretty much right away.
Yeah.
And I knew he would, because he knew what I did, and he was like, "Yeah, we're doing it. Like, of course he's gonna do it." And I love it too. It's been so fun. I mean, and just so cool. Like, I've gotten so many messages from him. So
Yeah.
much communication with him, and it's been beautiful. And even other people that have brought him through have had the same kind of experience, where they're just like, I can't even explain to you, like, the amount, like, I feel like my friend said this, she was like, "I feel like your dad is teaching me what he's, like,
Yeah.
taught me a newer depth of love, like,
Yeah.
for, like, that connection, that and what he
So
has."
beautiful.
It's
Yeah,
amazing. It's
it
amazing.
is.
Yeah. So that's so beautiful. So, I think another thing that I would wanna ask is, what would you say, like, versus when your dad first passed to now, what is your relationship like with him now in spirit?
Amazing. Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
it I have so much gratitude and I am so grateful
Mhm.
every single day. Like he is literally with me through everything and I feel that and I know
Yeah.
that and he lets me know that. It really it's one of like love, pure trust and he honestly it's which is so funny like cuz I obviously do lots of like nervous system regulation, right? Like
Right.
even being in the body. That alone of knowing that he's there and like always feeling him
Mhm.
that alone helps calm my nervous system because I like I just it's such a like so hard with words, right?
Yeah. Oh, no, I hear you. I
Because
know.
it's just such a
Yeah.
feeling like I
Yes.
and I don't necessarily have that with all, but like with him, 1,000%
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
And that's what I know. Like I just feel so protected, so
Yeah.
like he has me no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and, the other thing I was gonna say too is, like, do you well, I know, and we know this already, but have you like, seen him kind of do healing work on your clients while you're working?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
He gives them messages. Like if I
Yeah.
like working with people, he'll just come through or
Mhm.
like if I have clients who work with me
Mhm.
and they let's say they go to a medium, my dad comes through in their readings. And it's like
Wow.
he now feels like I'm working with you too. I get you from over here
Yeah.
and she gets you from over there. And it's so funny
Yeah.
to me because that's like a real thing. And he
Right.
absolutely gets involved in everything I do. If you're working with me, you're literally working with him.
Right. Yeah, no, and it makes perfect sense. I mean, because to me, I mean, that's your team, right?
Right.
That's your team. Oh, I love that, because that's just another experience that I've just been really grateful to have,
Yeah.
is like, because it was so beautiful. Like, my dad, he was super open to all of this, and so, like, and he knew what I did, and he was just,
Yeah.
and that was like, again, and I know I already brought that up. I mean, it was a real gift, and I was able to do healing work on him. I would bring him through meditations, and he had different experiences, and he would do Reiki on himself with me, and it's so cool, because I started doing these healing sessions in a salt cave. And now, whenever I work with someone, I literally will, like, look up, and I
There.
see my dad on their feet, like, doing, working, doing Reiki on my client. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, and he'll, like, literally, and he'll say to me, he'll be like, "All right, Days, like, this is what the person's got going on." Like, he'll like, help me, and he'll
Yeah.
talk to me about what's going on. And it's so cool.
It
It's
really
so
it's
amazing.
amazing.
I love it. I love it so much. So that's, and I think it's the other thing. It's like, I'll never be okay with it. And I think that's the funny thing, right? I'm like, I'm never going to get over that. There's part of me that will never get over it, right? Um, but
I mean,
thank
it
God.
still brings
Yeah.
me to tears,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Oh,
and I
me
think it
too.
always
Yeah.
will.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But oh my God, yes. But I am
Yeah.
so grateful that I like we still like and that's a big thing. We still get
Yeah.
them. And how
Yeah.
God can
Right.
and like really for everyone, like yes, they're not here, but like you 1,000% can still have a relationship with your loved ones always.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I know, yeah,
how
and that's
beautiful.
something I know, and that's something that I really try to always provide to my clients, to make them, know, like, you do not need a medium to be connected to your loved one. Like, please, I always make this so clear, because I think often it's a misconception or just, from so many different things, but, because they'll always say, oh, well, can you tell them this? Or can you tell, and I'm like, they hear you,
I hear you.
I don't need to tell them, and the other thing is that, I totally understand that seeing a medium can be an amazing experience and it can give you certain validation and things that you wouldn't otherwise get.
Yeah.
However, your loved ones will never be more connected to anyone but you. They are
Yeah.
yours. They're yours, right? So I just always really like to emphasize that because it's true. Because it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think one other thing that I would want to ask too is just with the passing of your friend, how is that experience different for you?
I was and I was devastated. She was my
Right.
best friend in the entire
Yeah.
world. I
Yeah.
was like 31
Okay.
at the time.
Hmm.
And she was my childhood best friend.
Right.
And we were even like inseparable at this point.
Okay.
And I like it was hard. It was really, really, really hard.
Yeah.
Um, and it never felt right.
Yeah. Hmm.
And it's funny because for the longest time, I actually, even once when I started this, I could not connect with her. Even when I was doing like, but that was like more on me, not
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
like a me thing, not a her thing, right?
Right.
Like I had that block and it was more just me like kind of having anger towards her I
Yeah.
feel like she abandoned me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get
And
it.
that's
Yeah.
how it really felt. Like when she passed, I was like, she just literally just left me. Like I felt
Yeah. Yeah.
um but I wasn't like, I definitely went to mediums after, right?
Mhm.
For
Right.
sure. But I didn't, which is so interesting. I never like spoke to her. My biggest loss, like what started my loss was when I was like 18 maybe, and my grandfather passed, and him and I were really, really close. Now I had
Yeah.
loss prior to that,
Mhm.
but my grandfather really, really impacted me.
Yeah.
I will say, when I look back, I always felt him.
Mhm.
Always talked to him, and I used to get a lot of visitation dreams from him.
Mhm.
But I never really stopped to pay attention. Like I think I had told you, like the day of his funeral,
Mhm.
I remember saying, I remember standing there the night before at the wake saying, I just wish you could get up and like run or jump. And I remember the next morning, I was sitting there doing my hair, blow drying my hair. I was sitting on the bed. And as I look, literally, my bed was jumping up and down. And I saw foot imprints in the bed. And I was like, oh,
Yeah. That's crazy.
like,
Yeah.
I had shit happen, but
Yeah.
I never, ever paid attention to it.
Right.
Or like, and I think I think it probably happens for everybody. I think most people just don't pay attention. It was like,
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
blinders are up. I have no
Mhm.
idea. And it wasn't until I was totally broken,
Right.
because I was
Yeah.
broken when my
Yeah.
dad died. Like they're
Yeah.
broken and total. Like, so I think that was what it was like. Nope, here we go.
Yeah. No, and I love that you say that because I mean, I think it's just also it's just interesting to touch on, especially if we've experienced multiple losses, just how each one is very unique, each
Oh,
one is completely different. And I mean, I think that's just true for every person, right? And that's where I'm especially being a medium, I'm very mindful of trying to, like say, "Oh, I understand," or because you really don't, and to me, because it's like every single relationship, let alone loss, is unique. Therefore, it's just like of course, there's going to be overlap and loss, but I really see each loss as something so individual. But I also love what you're saying about how it was really when you got to your lowest place, that was really the point that turned things around for you.
Yeah.
And I agree. I feel the same way for me. I think again, thankful that I was taught that through my experience of getting sober and everything.
Yeah. And thank
And
God you
yeah,
were sober, because
right,
like,
right. Oh my God. Again, it would have been, oh my God. I mean, I
yeah,
can't, I literally cannot
yeah,
it would just that would have like destroyed me. I mean, because if I was like using, like while my dad was
yeah,
sick or, oh my God, like I can't even imagine. It would have been a nightmare, but
yeah.
thank God I was able to have these beautiful moments of, really deep connection with him.
Yeah.
I'm very grateful for that, because not everybody gets that, and so I'm very lucky that I did at least have that. I was given that time, right? Like I
Yeah.
knew where it was going, and I was able to be present, and aware of that, and that was
Yeah.
really something that I'm really grateful for. But yeah, you know, I think it's all about it's just that those dark places, and that's something that I'm very passionate about. It's those are the places where we grow, right?
They really are.
They are. It's
It
just but
was
it's
so dark.
choosing. Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
was. It was like I truly didn't like when I look back on it now,
Yeah.
it was 1000% his doing, making sure
Right.
that because I don't know how I would have,
Yeah.
right? It was bad. I was bad. I
Oh
was
yeah. Yeah.
so like, oh, so
Right.
angry and sad. Like,
Yeah.
sad isn't even a word for it, right? Like,
No, right.
there really was no, I was literally at my darkest one could have ever.
Yeah. 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 And I think that's the other thing. It's also realizing if you're in that space, especially if anyone's listening that's in that space right now, it's just
Yeah,
to keep going, keep going. It is always worth it. It's always worth
always.
it. And one of the things that had helped me, I remember, is that when I had realized that I lost my faith when I was going through all of this, and I was like, I don't get it. Don't
Yeah.
get it anymore. I don't want to do anything. I just feel like I'm in my body just existing, and that's basically it. And I was able to return to when I first got sober. All these things always like there are a lot of parallels for me, but
Yeah.
when I first got sober, I did not believe that I could have a fulfilling, happy life sober. I did not believe that this stuff was going to work. I thought everybody in AA was nuts, pretty much. I was like, yeah, right,
Ah,
guys. Like, okay. But I also knew that what I was doing up until that point wasn't working.
yeah.
And I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't figure it out on my own. So I just surrendered. I decided, okay, I don't really believe this is going to necessarily work, but I don't really have anything else to do. So I might as well try. Right. And I just was like, okay, I'll just take one step at a time. And then it worked.
Yeah.
Right.
That
Yeah.
that was like literally like, but that was what the mediumship did for me. I didn't believe
Right.
it. I remember saying to people, there is no way that I can do this, but you know what? I'm going to go try and just see,
Mhm.
right? Like, and I was like, oh, I remember being like, oh my God, there is something to this.
Right.
And that
Yeah.
literally, because that's where I was like, at this stage, like, what? I'm like, I need to do something.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I remember I was actually at a meeting when I realized that when I
Yeah.
was going through this, because I felt like I was in the same place again,
Yeah.
just in a different
Same, right.
circumstance.
Yeah. Same
Right.
story. Yeah. Same pattern.
And I was sharing about it in a meeting, and I was like, oh, okay. So I guess that's what I'm gonna do. So I was like, I'll just trust these little steps towards spirit, and I guess I'll just let it go, right? And it worked. It did
Yeah.
work.
It
And
does.
it's amazing. It's amazing. Oh, well, so this has been such a I feel like we could go on forever about this. I mean, forget it, but I'll have you back on.
Oh yeah.
But
I'm
yeah.
happy to come back whenever.
But this was such a beautiful conversation. And so if anybody wants to get in touch with Jaclyn or me, we will put our links, in
Yeah.
the episode description. We'll have all the links and everything to reach us. And definitely comment, reach out to us if you related to this episode or anything that came up. We would love to hear from you. We're always happy to connect.
Oh yeah.
And we're also just sending a lot of love to anybody that may be just experiencing loss right now and grief. We know it's not easy, and we're just sending love to you.
I
And
would like to say one thing for
yeah, yes, please.
because I truly, even if like you're starting out and it's something that you want to dive into, I cannot recommend Daisy enough because
Ah,
she does, and she teaches you how like easy it really does get to be, and you should totally work with her if you're interested in that because she really does help and she makes it easy.
Oh,
You
thank
get to learn
you.
how easy it is to be able to
Yeah.
talk to your loved ones. Because
Yeah.
I think it's like, even if you don't want to be a medium,
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
you should learn just so that like you get that, right? Because it's
Yeah.
such a beautiful gift when you get to
Yeah.
feel and have that relationship with your loved one. So
Oh yeah, it's
I just wanna say
everything.
that.
Thank
It
you so
really is.
much. Yeah. Yeah. And I can actually I'll put in the description because you reminded me. I do have a guided meditation to connect with a
Yeah.
past loved one to get you started as well. And again, you can always reach out. And I also can't recommend Jackie enough because her work, her healing work is amazing. It's amazing. And I've experienced it personally. So it's just great. So reach out to her too. All right, you guys, we will see you, or I will see you, and you'll see Jackie again. Well, I will see you on the next episode. And thank you so much for just spending your time with us.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.